This episode of Skirmish Supremacy is brought to you by Reformation Brewery, the official beer of your game night.
Too bad. It's live now, so.
Oh no, I'm not ready.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. I am your host, Tim Korkleski, and it is just going to be Nick and I ranting a little bit tonight. So on the other side is going to be Nick. Nick, what's going on, man?
We're ranting, right?
Rant over.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a couple things we've kind of seen discussed over the course of the last few weeks that might get a little ranty, but it's also something that we've been kind of dodging around talking about it a little bit here and there, and I think we just kind of decided to put our opinions out there on the podcast, and hopefully we could get some feedback from folks that listen in. But a lot of it tonight is going to be focused on organized play and how it should be run in game stores, and what should be expected of you as the person who's championing a game or games, and what you should somewhat expect from your local game store. So, there's a couple layers to each one of those things, so hopefully we'll touch on it tonight without, sidetracking too much, but knowing us, we're going to fail at that within the first 5 minutes. So anyway, Nick, I know that right now, for folks that are following along, to the stuff we do on Facebook and whatnot, Nick is actually running two different organized play events. He's got Skirmish Sundays at Gigabytes Cafe in Marietta, Georgia, and then every Tuesday at Discover Games at Fayetteville, Georgia. So this is all Metro Atlanta area. He does Thrashing Tuesdays, which is kind of a weekly. The folks get to pick what's going on, but I can sit here and babble on about it, but they're Nick's stuff. So Nick, why don't we talk a little bit about how you got these set up and kind of what your deal with that is?
I did a lot of hounding to get them to finally put it on the calendar. But, essentially what it came down to was I want to play games, but if I just say I'm going to go play, a game, and I did it with Blood and Plunder. I'm going to go play Blood and Plunder at Gigabytes every Monday. I drive by it on my way home. I'm going to stop in. I'm going to play. That's it. That's the game plan. And I didn't even make one event. So, I declared that in March or April, and I've been to Gigabytes up until a couple weeks ago. I don't even know. Only a few times. And usually only play, only one or two of those was to play any games. So, I was like, okay, I need to make it an event. I need to make it something that's on the calendar as I am doing this. And one of the best ways to do it, and one of the things that, both stores were asking about and asking for, is people to champion different games. Small games, namely,
GW does not need anybody's help at this point.
GW has plenty of help at both places. It's other games out there that, just need people to play them, just to have the community interested. And, it's interesting when you give it a focal point, how the community does, come around to play. One of the best examples I can give you is Dust. Before it really, Jim really started pushing it and all that, early or late last year, Dust was played occasionally by some of the folks up there, but it wasn't a mainstay. And now there's people playing constantly. Like most things, summer has slowed it down a little bit, but it's been a pretty staple game around there. Mm-hmm. But so I came up with this idea, talked to both of the owners, and said, hey, this is what I want to do. Let's make it happen. and so that's how I ended up doing it. Starting it at least, and been pushing it ever since, or trying to build it up. I only went through the second iteration of it because it's every other week for both of them.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm sorry. I thought it was every week. Shows you how much I'm paying attention.
I didn't want to overcommit just yet. Just because, interjecting something like that into family life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am definitely going to be gone all of these days. That said, I have interjected something into family life every week, and that is now I am taking over for Jim Godden when he leaves as the Dust Patriot. Ben and I are now Dust Patriots, so we'll be at Gigabytes every Thursday evening for some Dust.
Nice. Well, at least for you, it's a little bit easier because it's a little bit of father-son bonding time. It's not just you being out of the house like you were saying before.
Right.
So I guess caveat on everything we're going to talk about tonight, folks. We understand everybody's got a personal life outside of gaming. In Nick's case, he's got kids. We're both married, so obviously our significant others have to take precedence over what we do. So there's that to think about too. So keep in mind everything that we say tonight, is an ideal situation. So when it comes time to that, yeah, just ideally this is how it would be handled. We understand it's not always going to work that way. So cool. So I know that with Skirmish Sundays at Gigabytes, I guess let's start with that one. How are you currently handling the Skirmish Sundays?
So with it, and the format for Sundays and Tuesdays are the same, is that is about a week out. I take basically the games that I want to play, and some other ones, but usually games that I'm at least interested in playing, and I create a poll on Facebook, and I set it out there for everyone who's interested to vote on. And, and I do put it out there with the caveat that I may just say screw it and play whatever the hell I want instead. But it's kind of get a pulse and feel for what do people want to play out of this list. And sometimes it's they want to play a game that they really don't even have or know. Relic Blade has been getting a little bit more popular on there, even though most people in the area don't have it. They're still like, yeah, it looks fun. So that's been one making the rounds. Blood Red Skies has been really good. I've run a few different demos for it. Well, demos / learning games of it. But, so I give them some time, or, I put it out about a week. And then a couple days before the event, I kind of, say, okay, here's what I'm going to be bringing. And I, try to post stuff, as I'm working on the stuff or getting anything ready, stuff that engages people, keeps it in their mind, puts it on their own mental calendar.
Right.
Of I want to do this. So, I mean, that's the basic format that I'm using right now, is just putting a poll out there for, on topic, on games that I want to be playing, and letting people, kind of decide, which of those they want to play.
Okay. Excellent.
And then hoping that they show up.
So how has the turnout been on the event so far?
So the first Skirmish Sunday wasn't bad, which was actually a bad thing because it was also after GigaCon, or it was during GigaCon, which is their annual really big tournament for War Machine. And by really big, Gigabytes is a big store, and they had it like wall to wall with War Machine players. So even though I, had the tables reserved and all that, we did have to finagle to kind of get some space. But I'd say 10-ish people showed up, which it's good for all the various games, and it was kind of last minute, advertising for the first one. Tuesdays, it's being a little bit slower at Discover. Discover's also a little bit of a newer game store as well. So, I've had 4 to 5 people around for it.
Nice. So you've been getting on average, 4 to 5 to 6 to 8, depending upon store and what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I know your formats are a little bit more loose, just due to the fact that with you definitely want to play certain games more than others. Sometimes we get that. We like most people out there that I know of, they play a lot of different games, unless they're GW players and they can't afford to get into other games. But that's neither here nor there. So the big thing that kind of led to this discussion was also some of the stuff that we saw in different groups about people that wanted to get games started, or I guess putting feelers out there for people as to how they would like to see games grown. And I don't know, it's something to me that, keep in mind, I'm a little bit more biased on this, folks, because of the fact that, when I got my start working, my day job is the gaming industry. I got my start in the gaming industry by being really, really good at organizing events and being really, really good at communicating those back to the companies that, I was doing it for. So, my opinions on this are pretty strong on a lot of things. So one of the things that was brought up in a group was about well, how do we get that going? And a lot of people have this idea that it's well, if you just show up and put models on a table whenever you want and just kind of hang out there, that eventually people will just come up and start playing. Now, will I say that doesn't work? Of course not. You're always going to have that chance that someone's going to walk up and say, hey, you know what is this you're showing off? Can I learn to play? But 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say that is utter garbage. And if you really want to start playing a game in a store, you have to do a lot more than just show up and sit there. So what I mean by that is, if you're getting into a new game, having 2 starter sets ready to go, fully painted. And I cannot stress it enough, because you have to catch people's eye for them to even consider a game. So if it's not fully painted, take the time and get it painted before you decide to jump into this. So it doesn't matter what kind of game it is, be it War Machine, be it, Last Days, be it Frostgrave. It doesn't matter. You need 2 fully painted forces. And again, they could be demo-sized forces. Nobody's saying that you have to have a full-on army for both ready to go. Unless it's games not even games like Kings of War, because Kings of War, you could easily just push around, call it 500 points, which is, 2 to 3 regiments?
Yeah, something like that.
Euro, and just, that's enough. Just you give people a taste of the game. You're like a drug dealer. The first hit's free. It's that little hit to get them involved, and then you really take them for all they're worth. No, I'm just kidding. But
he's not.
But it's one of those things to where you have to be consistent about it. In a way, this is my approach that it's always been, even when I was, doing this for different companies, is that you almost have to be a sales rep for that company. You're almost like a door-to-door salesman. The only difference of it is that you're not door-to-door. You're sitting there in the store, and you're picking off the people that are sitting there watching other people play games. Or you find a bunch of people that are getting set up for a game, and they're just kind of hanging around. They haven't really started anything yet. Go snag them and just play a quick demo. Just tell them what you're playing. Now, again, what's the worst they're going to say on this? No. Who cares? On to the next one. Eventually, you do it enough times, you'll annoy the hell out of them into playing it. And then the idea from there is that they start playing, they have fun with it, you build a community, but it takes that initial effort. You can't just show up to a store, plop some stuff down on a table, and just sit there. So part of that, too, is also, like Nick was saying at the beginning, making sure that it's actually posted somewhere that you're doing this, be it a forum, be it a local club, poster board, Facebook. Most people nowadays have Facebook. You should be making an event on Facebook or making a mention of it somewhere. If you're on different Facebook groups for different store events, then typing in there on Facebook, hey, every Tuesday or every other Tuesday, I am doing this at Discover. every other Sunday I am doing this at Gigabytes, or in my case, every Thursday I will be at Meeple Madness, and just talking about the different games that you're running. So it takes work. It's not something where you could just be like, oh, I just bought this new game, and if I just sit there with a smile on my face and look around, like, people will just flock to me like some weird game Jesus. It doesn't work that way.
It should.
It should, but it doesn't. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, oh, well, Tim, that sounds easy for you. You've been doing this for a long time, yada, yada, yada. Okay, sure. Is it easy for me? Yes. But at the same time, it didn't start that way. It's like anything else. Like, I understand, like, the gaming industry, and this sounds kind of judgy in a lot of ways, is very socially awkward. I get that. Like, we all kind of form our own little cliques. There's always the people we feel comfortable gaming with. If you really want to build a game, community for a certain game, you have to step out of that comfort zone a little bit. You have to be willing to kind of put your neck out there, for lack of better terms, in order to really kind of build your community. Because again, at the end of the day, what fun is it to buy a new game and sit there and be the only one that plays it, or the only one that has desire to play it? You know what happens with that? You just spent $100, $200, $300. You have a bunch of models. You decide to paint a few of them, find out nobody's playing. You lose interest. You get rid of them on eBay.
Oh, that's the point I'm not at. Okay.
Yeah, so Nick's doing it wrong. But, yeah, that's just my first initial thought on this process, is that it's going to take work, and you have to be consistent about it. Like, you have to be willing to walk over to people and say, hey, my name is Nick, my name is Tim, whatever your name is, and just be like, this is kind of what I'm running. You want to check this out real quick? You have to do that, especially on a game that's like brand new or relatively unknown. You have to be the one to go out there and hook them. You're never going to do that just by sitting there. Nick, what's your thoughts on that?
I feel like you just told me I need to be a hooker.
Yes.
Yes. Of course. No, in reality, yes, you've got to be, you got to be personable. You got to be able to, advertise, push, try and rope people in. One of the best things to be able to do also is set it up with somebody that beforehand. Get one of the people to show up, even if they don't want to play the game that you're playing, or even if you beat them really badly at playing it twice. But people look and they go, "Oh yeah, oh, is this that game? Or can I try it next?" Stuff like that. Because especially once you have somebody else there with you, you make it so that they see that you are there, that you're having fun, that the game looks fun, and you got to be willing to talk to them about it, chat their ear off about it. Obviously there's a too much portion to that, but yes. But you also have to be consistent. People do desire consistency. And, I, for like the dust stuff, I really kind of wanted to move the day. And David's like, we probably could, but it's been on the day it's been for a while now. And, I really like to keep it there because it keeps people consistent, because people are habitual.
Mm-hmm.
I think anyone knows, if you have a 3-day weekend, you had Friday off, or, hell, even if it's a Monday, all day Monday, you think it's Sunday, or all day, Saturday, you're thinking the next day's Monday. People are very, habit forming. So when you throw that off, it does throw everything off. Will people adapt if you change a date? Yes. But you do.
That also takes work for a lot of people to adapt in that way.
And it does. It really does. And so he wasn't like, I won't do it, but he laid out some good reasons, and I went, you know what, I can work with it. All because I have to drive by Gigabytes on my way home, and by the point I'm getting 2 Gigabytes or right around there, I'm about an hour into my drive. Don't want to really finish that drive and then try and drive back through Atlanta traffic to Gigabytes after picking up my son or anything else. So,
right. So if
You
we
know-
haven't mentioned it before, folks, Atlanta traffic is absolutely freaking terrible.
If
Atlanta traffic is absolutely freaking terrible.
If you haven't heard me gripe about it before, it is one of the worst things in the world. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, mostly because I wouldn't want to see them in traffic.
Yeah. So, well, traffic aside, yes, you are correct. But yeah, it's and that's the other thing too. Is like you have to be consistent. Like that, out of everything, I think that's probably the most important, is just the consistency. You have to be consistent, and we understand there's going to be stuff that pops up: holidays, family emergencies, birthday parties. Most normal functioning human beings out there in the modern age realize this and understand that. Nobody's saying that like you have to give up your anniversary with your wife because it's Wednesday and you typically play Blood Red Skies on Wednesday. No, go to the anniversary with your wife. So when you look at it from that standpoint, just knowing that like, okay, this Wednesday I'm off, but next Wednesday I'm going to be running games again. Hell, look at the podcast. We record on Wednesday nights. We've been, for the most part, very consistent about that outside of like, personal obligations or holidays, because we didn't, I could tell you right now, folks, there's no fucking way this thing would be recorded on a consistent basis.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, consistency is one of the biggest keys that, has kept it going, because even the days where we've ended up going, okay, well, we can't record on Wednesday, so we'll record, even if we have an event that weekend, we'll record we won't.
No,
I've seriously come to the conclusion that we won't. Not because we don't want to, but because we just get so busy doing whatever it is that there doesn't end up being time, because it isn't part of our schedule, our plan, our routine, our
right. We would
life.
like to. That's a big thing. We would really like to. Every time we say we're going to do it, we would really like to, but it never happens.
Yeah, it gets nuts.
So that's probably the big thing, is being consistent. So for example, I've got Thursday Throwdown up at Meeple Madness. That's my newer gig. And right now, yes, it is all Blood and Plunder. However, I have mentioned that I'm going to be running Dust. I'm going to be running, Ragnarok, just because it's a local game store for me. So those folks can, test out the game a little bit early. And, just it helps with my own personal promotion, which, I understand is a little bit self-serving, but I don't give a shit. And, there's a couple other games in there too that I really want to run. Gangs of Rome is one of them that once I kind of get out from underneath this, I'm not even going to call it a rut. It's just, I've got a lot of stuff I need to get done for books 2 and 3 for Ragnarok. So I need to focus on that. But once those are done, like I really want to paint some stuff for Gangs of Rome. I really want to start playing some other games. So that's my big thing.
I will call Tim out here. Even his wife went, but your deadline isn't even until then. You really could do something else. And he even whined then. Oh,
yeah.
But Phil's a meanie. So Phil, when you listen to this, he said it just like that.
To hell with Phil. Anyway, all joking aside, it's again, it's a matter of like, okay, what models do I want to put in the book? And like when you start putting it all together and you're like, holy shit, it's a lot to do. And that's the big thing is, for me, again, like every time I sell a copy of a book, I'm getting paid on it, right? So it's like I want to make sure that everything is done and it's done right for the books. That's not saying that like I don't care about the rest of my models by any stretch. It's just I want to make sure that the stuff I'm obligated to do is done. Because at that point, then I can take my Gangs of Rome stuff and be like, awesome, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put tattoos on the guys just because I can. And, and just do all the crazy shit that I really want to do instead of just like, well, here's a white tunic and this is a white guy and he's wearing, a cestus and, he's got a net. Wash done. Go. I don't want to do that. Like I want to take the time, especially with Gangs of Rome, to really make it look cool. So, and again, that's just my own personal preference on that. Like right now, just because of the fact that I've got, my modern military rule set that I mentioned on the last episode is, I've got 45 models I'm trying to get ready for Gen Con. Okay, so we're recording this literally 7 days before Gen Con starts, and I've got 45 models I need to finish. So they're close to being done, but the point of it is it's still a lot of work. But yeah, ramble aside, a lot of it comes down to just, again, kind of going back to the consistency and, focusing. You try to keep your focus on like 1 or 2 games at a time if you can. Nick, I know you're all over the place because that's kind of what you want to do, and it's been working awesome. So don't follow Nick's exact way of doing that if you're not playing that many games. Again, and a lot of it comes down to your game store too. Luckily, we live in an area, Atlanta's very heavy on wargaming of all different kinds. So Nick is able to run, 2 events at 2 different stores that people are like, yeah, whatever. I play like 6 or 7 different war games. We understand not every area is like that. It might be that you only have 1 or 2 that people are really interested in, or you're really, busting your ass to get Malifaux going in a store that's only ever been GW, things like that. And in cases like that, focus, I'm using Malifaux as an example here. Focus on the Malifaux. Focus on making sure that like every Monday night you are running Malifaux for the store. And it might be that you're the only crazy person in there running Malifaux. That's fine. Do it, and then you eventually get people catching on. You get the store to help back you on that a little bit, and it should help. Nobody's expecting a skyrocket, right? You don't go from 0 to 24 members playing a game overnight. It never happens. I've never seen it happen ever in all of my time doing this. It just, unless of course you're like a super crazy marketing person, and at that point you should be being paid by the store to run all of their events and legitimately paid by the store, because then you're doing them a huge service. But again, that's an entirely different thing. But again, based upon the area, try to focus on those 1 or 2 games to get it going. And then if you want to switch gears, or you find a champion to kind of take over for you while you switch gears for a while, go ahead and do that, but be consistent with it. I guess it kind of leads into the next portion, which is, what should you expect from your game store when it comes time to this stuff?
Oh, that's a big one. And actually, I was recently talking with somebody else about that topic, actually, because they were looking at proposing it to their store, and I have mixed feelings on it. I have mixed feelings on it because you're going to go and play games, and it's games that you want to play. So, just because you're trying to drum people up, why does a game store have to reward you for it? Now, if the game store, goes to you and says, hey, will you do this? I feel that maybe a little quid pro quo or something needs to happen. They need to support you in doing it, for one, and incentivize you to do it.
Right.
Also, in some of that, there are programs. There's Pathfinder, Press Gangers, the Henchmen, the Patriots. There's all these different outfits with different companies that game companies that reward you for putting together events, playing games, giving demos. And so they reward you. They incentivize you to be a community leader. So then once again, does your local game store actually need to get you to do that? Is that double dipping? Is it right for you to expect your game store to do that if you're a part of those programs? And I don't necessarily have a good answer on that, or a good feeling, because in some ways, yes, you are doing something for them. You are bringing customers in, or you are trying to engage the community, right. And you are then being another tool of advertising. Even if you're just excited about the game, if you go through, and one of the things that, even doing this podcast or whatever, I don't always throw it out into the local game stores unless I know it's relevant to stuff that they have, or they're doing, or they want, or things like that, because I don't want to pollute the environment with useless stuff. I don't post anything about Kickstarters in there because they're a game store. Their money is coming from selling games. They may do other things as well, but their whole business is. So I'm not going to tell people go back this on Kickstarter. It's maybe talk to the game store about backing the retailer pledge. I know David over at Gigabytes, he'll do that with game stuff that he believes in, or if enough people express interest, he'll back at the retailer pledge levels for stuff so that he can have it available for people.
Yeah.
So that little segue and rant on that, but so the reality is that, I mean, honestly, like I said to begin with, I end up feeling a little bit conflicted because I see, a couple of different things with it. Yes, in some ways, I am acting as nearly free labor for the store to help bring people into the store, which then generates money at some point for the store. If I'm there and I give 10 people a demo of some game and even 10% of them buy, that's at least one person buying into the game. That's one more person spending money in the store. And I'm not saying I need to earn money off of doing that, but possibly showing your gratitude, at having helped you isn't necessarily a terrible thing.
Right. Yeah. And again, we're not saying that stores need to bend over backwards for you or do, give you free stuff or massive discounts or anything like that. But, they need to do something to show that you're at least appreciated for running the event. And I think, like, even before we get into the appreciation side, like, you need the backing from your game store. And what I mean by that is, so for example, I mentioned, making a Facebook group or, an event to tell people, hey, this is what we've got going on. Having the actual game store go out of their, and again, at this point, I don't even really call it going out of the way. All they got to do is just share your post on their page, and let people know this is a thing that's happening. I think that does wonders. If a store is not willing to show you that they're willing to back what you're attempting to do, because that's the thing, is at the end of the day, you're attempting it, right? You're talking a brand new game. It doesn't matter if it's Test of Honor or Gangs of Rome or Malifaux or Infinity. Pick your poison. It doesn't matter. If they've never played it before and you're making an honest attempt to get the game going in the store, the very least they could do is repost your stuff on their page to say, yes, this is happening here. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you can make events all you like, but if the game store that you're running them at is not willing to go out of their way to even just do that little bit of just sharing your events on their page, then it's going to take way more work for you to get anything done. And in a lot of cases, and I've heard this from folks that I used to work with in the past at various companies, there's resentment there when a store doesn't even take the time to do even that little bit. That they're like, well, why am I doing this? Why am I coming to this store and doing this? I could just form my own game club and do it, or I could go to a different store. And then, of course, it turns into the store getting pissed, and then it turns into this giant circle jerk of frustration, and it doesn't have to.
Nope, doesn't have to. And yeah, so setting up both events has been a little bit challenging. I poked and prodded at both stores for a while, and it took them a really long time to create the events, and that was frustrating. It was frustrating because in reality, so I started out with Gigabytes and, went and talked and went through and, did what they asked me to do to get this put on the calendar. and they just sat there. And that is frustrating. That does upset me, because it's like, I have spent the time to do this when I could. I have 2 game tables. I have 2 at least 4x6 game tables in my house, in my basement. I could have people just come straight over to my house and play games. Now, maybe because I don't want to do all the cleaning and all that before somebody shows up to my house, I prefer to go play at the game stores. But you don't have to judge me on that, people. or, just in reality, it's easier, and most people are just more comfortable meeting at the game store than, hey, do you want to come play in my basement? I've got popsicles.
Well, yeah. So anyway, we're getting restraining orders, but
yeah, I haven't had one of those in a while.
But yeah, you bring up a valid point. It's one of the things that could lead to a lot of frustration, especially if you're trying to get like smaller games going. Because let's face it, I've said it numerous times. I know that our sentiment has always been that GW doesn't need the help. There's no real reason for us to talk about it. Again, that is not Nick or myself or any of the guests that we've ever had come on the podcast. That's nobody shitting on GW products, right? Like we're not. Like we're still fans of a lot of the stuff they do. I'm excited about Kill Team. I still like Age of Sigmar. It's just, again, it's not something that we have to cover on the podcast. And as far as like our gaming interests, there's already plenty of people at all of the stores that we go to that are doing it. What good is it going to do us to go in there and, at that point, we're just trying to one up people. No, we're not going to do that. Like GW doesn't need our help on that. However, when it comes time to games like Gangs of Rome or Test of Honor or, Blood Red Skies, or like new games or smaller games, those are the guys that need help. And that's always kind of what, Nick and I have pushed when it comes time to the stuff that we're looking to do. So, when it comes down to that, if you're playing, really at this point, a not Games Workshop game, you really have to, go out your way and really work to get it to have a player base in the store.
Yeah, and it's weird. There's all these smaller games, and you get the people who are in them, and just like me, they don't just get into that game. They get
that's the other thing too.
They get into all the games. Actually, it's really funny. When we first met Nathan, Nathan and Caitlin, they showed up for a game day that we put on for Blood and Plunder because they were seriously into pirates, and they had picked up some of the stuff. I think they had gone, I forget what convention they had gone to. They saw it there. They got some Blood and Plunder stuff. They found, our event. They showed up to it. And, talking with Nathan, he got, he's gotten really into gaming. Hadn't done any of it before that. But, swore up and down, left and right, that all he was going to do was play Blood and Plunder. And we still play a good amount of Blood and Plunder, not nearly as much as I wish, just because we don't get together enough. But on the flip side of that, he then showed up for the first Dust Day, and he's a patriot. He's actually going to be going to Gen Con and helping them at Gen Con. Just all sorts of stuff. Really big into Dust after he played it. He's really big into Gangs of Rome. Actually, he declared that, for his birthday, he wanted a Gangs of Rome game day. Or sometime right after his birthday.
Great. So I do have to get models painted quickly. No pressure. Thanks a lot, asshole.
Well, that's what he told you.
Yeah, he did.
He shouted it. And it's stuff like that. He's bought into Blood Red Skies, which is cool because I'm playing Blood Red Skies and I'm having fun with it, and and all that. So, it is fun having, somebody else who is, picking up stuff. But, it is funny when, you're a not GW player, how many games you buy.
Yeah.
And so that does make it hard, but that's also why I am doing the Sundays and Tuesdays the way that I am is more purposely for all the small games to rotate around. Now, the fun part is last night I was sitting talking with Alan, who owns Discover Games, after we played a big 4-player game of Blood Red Skies, and we were talking afterwards about how the game's really simple, but it's got a lot of tactics, and then we got on to how to turn the really simple game of Blood Red Skies not more complicated, but even in more fun of an escalation type league for a campaign system. So they have different levels of pilots, and you start out with your squadron of 6 pilots that are all rookies, and this is what you have to do for them to progress, and how to make them all the way, go all the way up the ranks, to include how could they actually become an ace, because one of the interesting things with being an ace in World War II, to become an ace, you had to shoot down 5 planes. In Blood Red Skies, it's really hard to shoot down a plane. In the 4-player game, we had 12, 13 planes on the table on each side, and only 2 went down in the entire game. But we still forced, through the point system, we still forced the other players to run away. Our opponents, because it was teams, so it was 2v2. But it's things like that to organize all of these things, to put it together, to bring it out so that people can experience it and have fun with it, and it's a lot of time other than playing the games in the store. And anyone who's come out to one of my events has never used store terrain on their tables. It has been terrain that I bought, purchased, borrowed, been loaned, that is painted up, is thematic. So that also plays into the whole hey, so if you're doing this for the store, what should the store do to support you, or incentivize you or whatever? At the very least, just advertise it, share it, tell people about it. Do a little bit of the promotion that you should be doing anyways, because I'm going to be doing a lot to make that event, kick off.
Right.
I am going to be, my own armies that I will bring will suffer to get the terrain and to make the tables look good. And then I'll spend all night trying to paint whatever I can the night before to finish up. If I'm not trying to do that for the terrain.
Right.
So, things about building a community, building games up, and organized play and all of that. It's a challenge. It's something that, on some levels, I'm getting to go play games. I'm getting to go play games that I want to play. So, it's a big, massive bonus. Spreading the word, trying to, help herd people there before the event even happens. And, so it is really important to have the local stores help promote it. Have them, say it. And I'm not saying that in every conversation they have with someone, they should go, hey, there's this thing that's like 2 weeks away that you should come. No, but at different times when people express interest, hey, when do people play that? Well, hey, we have this event or we have this, and keeping it on your mind so that you can tell people so that they are, informed about it. Every now and again, saying something and pushing it out. Possibly even the whole, I don't know if Nick will want to run this, but, here's a new product. Maybe Nick will, be running this in his games. I don't know if he's interested, but, here's his events, or things like that. It's things that, help you possibly, make me interested in buying something new. And then, adding another game to the possible games being played.
As usual.
I like the shiny.
Yeah,
I was going to say, Stronium Dog looks shiny.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't even know anything about the comic books, but it just looks like that weird, almost Judge Dredd knockoff-esque feel to it that it's like...
Yeah, 82,000, yeah.
Yeah. That I'm like, yep, that looks kind of fun. And actually, the starter box comes with Sarissa Precision MDF terrain in it, which, if you've ever put Sarissa Precision terrain together, it's amazing. I love their terrain. That was not a sponsored plug, by the way, folks. But if Sarissa, if you want to sponsor, get a hold of me.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, it's definitely it's harder when you are running multiple games. Now, this also leads me to, there's going to be a bit of a rant here, folks. So, bear with me. I understand this has kind of gone all over the place and people will go, oh, Christ, here Tim goes again. But you know what? If you listen this far, just strap in for the ride, because at this point it's going to happen.
I'm putting my helmet on.
Now, I've said this before on things as I'm over here rubbing my temple. When you are playing games in your own home and you want to proxy stuff, please go ahead and proxy. Nobody's going to say no. However, if you were going to be running a game in a store that is supporting another company, the very minimum thing that you should be doing is using that company's products to run their game. Period. I understand that maybe not all the products that people put out for various companies may not be of the best quality, and we understand that. However, if there's a certain game out there that you really want to promote and you really enjoy the game and you want other people to get into and enjoy the game, the only way that game is going to survive is if people are spending money on that game. That includes the game store, buying stuff from said company, and, making sure that people are continuously buying from the game store of that said company's products. Now, I'm not going to mention any names of the companies, but let's just say that it rhymes very much with Kings of War. And so the point of it is that if you're going to run a game, now I understand, we are both, we have sponsorship through Osprey. Obviously I got stuff coming up through Osprey. I like games that are miniatures agnostic. If you guys are playing anything Ash Barker's put out with Last Days, it's miniatures agnostic. Run what you want. Game stores, if the game itself is miniatures agnostic and it's basically buy the book at the game store and then go buy whatever miniatures you want to fill out that line, the game store is still getting the money in that case. They don't care. However, when it comes down to a company having a line of models, right? The only way that they keep making models is if people keep buying them. And the only way that the store can keep selling those models is if the company keeps making the models, which means that people have to keep buying them. And you see where this loop goes, right? So if a model company is making models for a game, do your damnedest to use the models from that game. So, and I'll go back to Blood Red Skies. There's plenty of companies out there that over the years that have made die-cast planes around roughly the same size as what they put in the Blood Red Skies. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use the Blood Red Skies models to play Blood Red Skies. Or in the case of the one I was telling you about, the game that rhymes with Kings of War, use the models from the actual company that makes the damn game. You know, because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, you want to play some fantasy rank and flank? Well, guess what? Warhammer Fantasy Battle is dead. Get over it. Either go on to play Age of Sigmar, go play the 9th Age, but if you're going to play a game by another company that's putting out a model line, and here's the thing too, I'm going to back this up just a little bit. If they don't have the current models out yet, I totally understand. Use the stuff you got, right? But if they've got even 80% of the line done, you should be supporting that company if you want to keep playing their game. That's how this stuff works, folks. You know, welcome to Capitalism 101. If you want people to stick around, you have to keep buying their stuff.
So maybe you know certain companies shouldn't, and Blood Red Skies is kind of guilty of this as well, because, and I forget where I saw it, but you know, when you mention that, you know, there are other people that manufacture other stuff and you're welcome to use that other stuff in their games, and they put it in their rule books or somewhere in their promotional material where you can read it, you know, see, it's the one place where you and I draw a big difference, because that to me means that I don't have to buy your stuff, especially if I disagree with the quality of that stuff, and I can get, you know, for cheaper or, you know, whatever, better quality. Now, granted, like Blood Red Skies, their planes are great, and I don't have any, so I don't have any reason to go, you know, seeking out any of the other planes. You know, for another game that you know, rhymes with whatever you said earlier.
The one that rhymes with Kings of War.
Yeah, that one. So that one, I didn't have any fantasy rank and flank. I bought their stuff, and I was horrified by their stuff. It sits very much unpainted, and I happily leave it unpainted in boxes somewhere, and it should just be lucky it hasn't been thrown in the trash, because I wouldn't even put it on eBay and sell it to my worst enemy. Because,
well, you could drive it. You could force your worst enemy to drive across Atlanta to buy it from you in person.
I could. I might do that. I know I've used my worst enemy a few times tonight. But
just combine it all into one thing and just shit all over whoever this person is.
Right? There we go. Now, you know, if said company is doing better with it, you know, with the quality of their stuff, and, you know, they have certain, I don't know, expectations or, you know, drive or updates that they're going to change their policy away from that, then yes, you should support them. But if they leave that stupid caveat in their stuff, then that's their own stupid fault. And yes, if they go out of business, everyone who likes the game is going to be sad and not have anyone to blame but themselves, because somehow they didn't support the company. But at the same time, they didn't support the company because the company didn't demand they support it. But then if, you know, the game is stale and lots of stuff, you know, obviously there's a lot of layers to that onion.
They all stink.
And you know, in recent discussions, that was kind of the heart of, you know, my point, is that, you know, yes, it's an official, and it's an official and highly technical term somewhere. Just the whole point, you know, has frustrated me, because I get the point of supporting game companies. I do it a lot. Far too much, according to way too many people, even in the gaming community. They just haven't found the appropriate groups to send me to. So, there is the point of supporting a company, but I do actually feel it is actually an insult when I'm being told to support you, but you can't even support yourself with putting out something decent.
Yes, you are correct on that. So, I mean, again, so this one in this case is a very special circumstance, but at the end of the day, even when you're running stuff in shop, unless it's a miniatures agnostic game, you got to make sure that you're using the stuff that's actually provided by the company. Because at the end of the day, you are trying to get people to buy into the game, which means the game sticks around because the store bought it and they made money, and the company that they bought it from made money. Because nobody's doing this stuff for free, folks. I don't care what your opinion on it is that nobody does any of this for free. The whole purpose of a hobby is to literally drain you of excess money that you don't necessarily need to be spending. I mean, let's say
you're right. It's I have to laugh because I would cry otherwise.
Nobody would say otherwise. So and that's the biggest thing to keep in mind at the end of the day is that this stuff is not free. Everything else we mentioned before, but what it comes down to is that this hobby, like, again, especially miniatures, like we focus a lot on miniatures on the show. It's not free. We understand that it can get expensive. We understand that people are on a certain budget. We are never telling people if you can't afford to drop $600 at once, don't bother coming to play. Nobody's ever saying that. If they are, those are not the people you need to be hanging out with. There are games out there for everybody. And if it means that people need to do things at their own pace, then cool, work with them on their own pace to get them up to that point. I'm going to use that game that rhymes with Kings of War as a massive example of that. It's fantasy rank and flank. That gets expensive to get into. Okay. It doesn't matter how you break it down. When you go from a skirmish game where it's like, 20 models is the max I'll have on the table to like 20 models is one regiment and I need to fill 10 more. That gets a little ridiculous for a lot of people. So you can't expect people to just be like, yep, here's my $600 and my, 200 model army ready to go. They may not have the money to do that. They may not have the time to do that. Work with them on it to get it going. That's the other part of you being a champion of a game is you got to work with them on that. If people can only really start playing at, in the case of, I'm going to use Kings of War as an example. Most games are done at 2,000, 2,500 points. They've only got 500 points ready to go. Who cares? Play with them at 500 points. You want them to get up to 2,000? You got to keep them interested. You got to do it at their pace. I don't care if you've got 4,000 points of models sitting around waiting for those mega battle games. You want to get that person in the game? Keep playing 500 points till they get caught up. It's that simple. And it's like that with any other game that you put out there. It doesn't matter if it's War Machine. War Machine, I understand that they don't have as strict rules on painting for forces and things like that. But you know what? That's where you could do your own slow grow leagues and, reward people for painting. Things of that nature. Work with people on what they've got. War Machine's another good example of that. The new 75-point games, we're still looking 50, 60 models. Well, starter boxes are, 10 models? If that. It's usually like a Warcaster and like 2 Warjacks or a Warlock and a few War Beasts. Well, if that's all they've got, then play with them at that point level. Like, why crap on people for not being where you're at or where you want them to be at right off the bat? Like, you got to work with them. That's part of building the community. And it's the nature of the beast. It doesn't matter what game it is. Blood Red Skies, Gangs of Rome, Kings of War, War Machine, Hordes. Hell, even GW. We're going to throw them in there too. If you're starting GW at a store that just bought into a bunch of GW, nobody's expecting to run 1,850 point games of 40K right off the bat. And if they are, well, then they're not really helping build the community at that point. They're just looking to bring their Night Titans out so they can shit stomp the new guys.
Hey, there's something to be said about, rolling noobs with a knight. Not really.
Yeah, it's called being a dick, but that's besides the point. So yeah, I mean, overall, folks, I guess to kind of wrap up this thing is be consistent on your timing and your scheduling. Be consistent with what you're running. you have to be outgoing in order to make this happen, and you have to make sure that if you're going to be running this stuff in stores, that people are supporting the store and they're buying the products from the company that are running that the game is for. Anything else you want to throw in there, Nick? I know that this was a giant long-winded episode, basically over 3 rules we could have said in the first 5 minutes, but you know what? There's an hour-long show, so deal with it.
No, actually, the funny part is that it's been pretty concise, energetic, and full of a lot of good stuff. At least I feel it has been for us not knowing even a half an hour beforehand what we were even going to talk about.
That's because we're professionals.
Term used loosely.
Very
but there's a ton of stuff out there that just about this hobby, and this stuff. There's always questions and discussions about it, and even where I started out in this conversation, with any of it, how do you even do it? It's like we said, be consistent, get the store to back you, get people in the community to, championing this. I think the greatest feeling is when somebody goes, "Hey, are you going to be there on whatever date?" Unless you have to tell them no. Then maybe it sucks a little bit because you're like, "No, I got to go to my kid's graduation," or no. Obviously, family events, like we started out saying, are definitely something that should take a priority.
Yes.
But all that said, it's, I don't know, it's fun to run the stuff. It's fun to be in the community and to build a community, to have a community. And I think that's about it that I have for this topic for the episode.
Yeah. And again, folks, we're talking about organizing and running games in stores. If you're just a person that sits back and paints miniatures, well, then I guess you're just kind of a weirdo. But past that, everything else is good. So that's going to wrap up this episode of Skirmish Supremacy. We will see you next time. Ah! Thanks for listening to another episode of Skirmish Supremacy. To see more of the antics that Nick and I do, you can check us out on Facebook at Skirmish Supremacy. We also have Twitter, which we can be reached at Skirmish Supreme, because apparently Skirmish Supremacy does not fit in Twitter. And if you want to email us directly, you can reach us at tim@skirmishsupremacy.com or nick@skirmishsupremacy.com. Thanks for listening.